And then I really got into shooting more of my nature stuff when I got out of the Air Force. And I thought, the birds are the real flyers. It became so fascinating to me. It was just not something I'd planned to do. It just developed. And I fell in love with it. For the last 15, 18 years, I've shot pictures of raptors. And man does not really fly. Man builds machines that fly and sits in them. Birds really fly. And so I've found a new outlet, a new hobby, a new very time-consuming and very rewarding to be out there and watching the real flyers. The ballet dance that a harrier does across that field and makes that high G turn, one wing down, and grabs that mouse.
Welcome to Old Guy Talks to Me, a podcast dedicated to helping guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. Ladies, if you want to know what your guy is thinking, this podcast is for women too. Each week, a special guest helps you create that life you've imagined. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships and hot sex. Yeah, you hear me, getting laid more frequently, other guy vices, and topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to go to www.thestandard.academy/magazine and grab a free copy of our new digital magazine, The Standard Academy, where we talk about erogenous zones, growing hair back, and other things that will help you create that kick-ass life. Now get ready to listen up and share with friends.
This is Oris, the old guy, and this week we're going to have a golden oldie, the #1 downloaded podcast I've had in over 2.5 years. It's going to be Brian Shul and SR-71 pilots. Very, very interesting. There's lots of stories about what it's like to fly the fastest plane in the world. Also, if you have not already done so, get a free digital copy of my magazine by going to thestandard.academy/magazine, and you'll get many articles that will help you create life hacks that will help you create the life that you want for yourself and those that you love. So enjoy the podcast.
So lots of missiles have been fired at the SR-70. How come it's not possible to hit it?
Well, it's possible, but it's a very difficult shot. Imagine, okay, you're on the ground and you got this airplane flying over at 2,000 miles an hour over you. First of all, you have to lead me by 35 miles. Okay, so you got to lead your target, just like you lead a duck if you're a duck hunter. But now you got to lead me a long way. Now, when that missile comes up, it's always going to be faster than any jet. Those missiles are Mach 4, Mach 5, Mach 6, but just for a brief amount of time. So as the missile's making its way towards us or towards where it hopes we are, we get a signal that says, you got to launch, hopefully. And we turn the jet away. We change our course. Now that missile has to recompute another lead point, has to figure out it, and it's out of fuel by then, and it falls back to the ground. You don't really outrun missiles, but you can defeat them. And it's a very difficult shot at that speed. So it's not that the plane was completely invulnerable. It's just that over 4,000 missiles over 25 years, never hit one. It shows you just what a tough shot that is at that altitude and that speed.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So tell us, you said, I think in one of your comments, you said Ronald Reagan was probably one of the best presidents in using the SR-71.
He did. He really liked having this airplane because it carried a double sonic boom. And he liked letting the bad guys know that, yeah, we're looking at you and you can't do a thing about it. And he had us go up to North Korea one time when they had a big conference up there. And we were flying a figure-8 butterfly pattern up there. What the heck are we doing here? We've photographed the whole country already in the first 6 minutes. Well, it was his way of every 6 minutes sonic booming their coffee cup off the table during their conference there to let them know that, yeah, we know you're there. You didn't invite us, and you can't do a thing about it. And it really pissed off Fidel Castro. He really hated that. The Koreans didn't like it. They even fired a missile in the 80s at us, not at us, but to another SR crew. So, I mean, Reagan liked using it not only for the intelligence gathering, but just as a weapon in a psychologically that had an impact. And the Russians hated that they just couldn't build an airplane to get that high and that fast and sustain it, and they kept trying.
Yeah.
But Fidel and the North Koreans, they really wanted to be first to shoot one down, and they just couldn't.
Yeah.
Fidel didn't like it, that sonic boom over his island. We did it weekly. Every week we would be looking at everything going on the island down there. You think you'd get used to it. Yeah.
I think that's funny. That kind of taunting is pretty funny. It actually is.
Well, it wasn't all just taunting. I mean, we were actually taking pictures of
Sure.
what the latest Soviet missiles were in Cuba, or what's going on out there. And it was Reagan liked having this in his back pocket because it did things satellites can't do. Made a big difference.
All right.
From the Vietnam War to the Gulf War, this airplane served. So.
Yeah. So there's a famous story, and we're going to put a link to it. It's on YouTube. But what's the history behind the LA Speed story?
Well, everybody knows the LA Speed story, and I mean everybody, because I get 40,000 emails a day on it from all over the world. And if any of your listeners don't, they can go to any number of YouTubes and out there and hear it. But I would have never even told that story had not I'd been at a space camp group of kids in Seattle. I was giving a talk on the jet and just showing slides, and it was kind of fun. And a 12-year-old boy stood up and he said, well, this all sounds very serious and dangerous and scary. And he said, was it ever just fun? And I thought, what a great question. And that's the question I would have probably asked when I was 12. And I thought, so I had to think of a time when it was just fun. And that story came to mind that, it was pretty cool to be the fastest guys on the block one day when we're talking to LA Center and all the other people are talking. And so I told this story thinking that'd probably be the only time I'd ever tell that story. Little did I know, when I included it in my book, which we redid the books, it became, I don't know, it went viral. And it got, and I tell it at my talks because what happened was people wanted to hear it. So I started telling the story in my talks. Well, if I didn't tell that story, I got attacked in the reception later. You didn't tell that story. I said, well, everyone's already heard that. They said, we don't care. We want to hear it again. I brought friends to hear the story. So this went on for the last almost 20 years, 15, 20 years. And now that story is a staple of my talk. And I think, well, come on, you've already heard it now. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I'm sure on my tombstone, it'll be printed.
Well, there's movies that we watch over and over, even though we know how to,
I have finally succumbed to the crowd's wishes and say, okay, I get it. I've watched movies over and over, and I've eaten more than one ice cream sundae. So, but it would have never even come about had not that kid asked that question. And it was just a simple little nothing thing, but it makes a great story, and people seem to like that sort of thing. And I know now that if I don't tell it, the speech isn't an official Brian Shul talk.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on now. How do you see U.S. fighter planes today as compared to Chinese and Russian fighter planes, and how do they fit in the mix?
Well, I'm not an expert on it. I've read a lot of about it, but it's just so high tech now. It's so high tech that you wonder if we will still have manned aircraft eventually. Why not just have all these high tech drones that can do? Drones are doing more and more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The workload on the pilot now in an F-35 or an F-22 now is pretty high in unbelievably capable weapon systems. But then you have to ask yourself, what kind of war is it you think we're going to fight? It won't be a conventional thing like the Korean War where we just send jets in and jets are shooting other jets down. So I mean, I think the technology is frightening. It's amazing. The Chinese have built some fighter jets that, and everyone's stealing our technology. You just see all the airplanes are starting to look the same, but the Russians are building new lines of MiGs that will, go faster, higher. And again, I look at all that and I think it's just all great technology, but eventually, is it going to be satellite warfare, laser beams? Is it going to be drones, robots? We can't build enough jet fighters and everything to repel or to fight a war again in the globe with all the superpowers now that exist in the technology. So I just think it's fascinating. Every time I read about it, I go like, wow, that's a lot of load for the pilot, and they're working on it. It's like video games and TV screens and everything. I'm used to round gauges. I'm a dinosaur, and I look at those cockpits.
When you see private companies take people into space, what comes to mind?
The first thing I think of is, boy, you better take this really seriously because it's a dangerous endeavor. It's not a Disneyland ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people are treating it like it's a ride and it's all fun and games until the space shuttle burned up on reentry one day and we lost the whole crew. Then people go, oh, wow, gosh, that actually is kind of dangerous, isn't it? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really is. I think it's great that they can do that. I think, again, that they could fund it, get it done. NASA was fairly ineffective with their funding or their management of the funding and what they could do. It became political. I mean, so yeah, I think it's great that individual companies can step forward with enough money to create something like that. So that can't hurt, but they need to, now we're taking William Shatner up in space and we're doing all this. It's like, yeah, those are great PR things, but I don't know, until the next big accident happens or something goes wrong, you go like, oh yeah, I guess flying really is dangerous. And we forgot that for a minute in the hoopla of, sending movie stars into space. That's what I'll think of. It's a safety thing, but I'm all for it. All the development, technology, and capabilities if they can fund it to do it.
Yeah. So, what do you do for excitement now, and what is in your future?
I just do these podcasts, as many as I do, because I just love them, and I did 8 million of them during the COVID year. And if I do one more, I'm going to poke myself in the eye. What I do is I do my nature photography. I shoot birds, pictures of birds, mostly raptors, hawks, eagles, harriers. I found that when I got out of the Air Force, I did a lot of aviation photography. I did books on the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels. And so I'd done all the airplane photography I really wanted to do.
Do you need accountability? Are you looking to change the course of your life but have failed to keep on track? Too often we take in information and fail to act. Do you need an accountability program to stay the course? Then go to www.thestandard.academy and find out about my accountability program that goes with my course that helps you find out what you want, why you want it, and how to get it. The accountability program keeps you on track to get results.
And then I really got into shooting more of my nature stuff when I got out of the Air Force. And I thought, the birds are the real flyers. It became so fascinating to me. It was just not something I'd planned to do. It just developed. And I fell in love with it. For the last 15, 18 years, I've shot pictures of raptors. And man does not really fly. Man builds machines that fly and sits in them. Birds really fly. And so I've found a new outlet, a new hobby, a new very time consuming and very rewarding to be out there and watching the real flyers. The ballet dance that a harrier does across that field and makes that high G turn, one wing down, he grabs that mouse. The way a hawk will rule his field from his perch, and just 100 yards away, you'll see that little mouse, and not one wing flap all the way down, he'll get it. And I'm staring at, what is he looking at? What does he see there?
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, I go out for hours at a time, weeks at a time sometimes, find areas where those birds are active. And I'm planning on doing a book on kestrels, harriers, and hawks. They're just such incredible flyers, and they have more personality than airplanes in some ways. I've done it. How many times can you photograph an F-15 at an air show? And I used to love to do that. You get some beautiful pictures of them, but there's a billion pictures on the internet, and there's
Sure.
a billion bird pictures on the internet also. But when you get it, when you've spent the time, effort, and Mother Nature gives you that gift of that hawk coming right at you, or letting you get close enough near that fence, it's a real treat. I've always enjoyed nature photography, from wildflowers to butterflies to scenic. So I've always been an outdoor person. So it was a natural progression for me to go from flying airplanes to photographing the real flyers, and I'm really into it now. So it's a lot of hours. You gotta have a lot of patience, but like I said, it's like the guys that fish. That you don't get a big fish every day, but you still love being out there. But when you do get that big fish, boy, you remember it. It's a real gift, and you just feel like you had a special moment out there.
Yeah. So let's talk, Brian. Let's talk about some of the books you've written, and we'll put a link into where somebody can get them. But
Sure.
Let's talk about some of the books you've written.
Well, I started out by writing the first SR book. I was the first guy to ever write a book about what it was like to fly the SR-71, called Sled Driver. And it was kind of a modest little book. It came out in 92, 91, 92. And it was all my own photography. It was all my own pictures. So it was very unique and very popular. And we sold out of them. And then the publisher went out of business because he mismanaged a lot of other things in his life. And next thing you know, I did a second book on the jet, because we had the jet was declassified in the late 90s, early 90s, and called The Untouchables. And that book was about our missions over Libya in 86. We're the guys that did the Libya raid in 1986. So now we could tell you what we were really doing on a real mission. So I had a 2-book set on the SR, and that was all I really wanted to do. I didn't want to do like Sled Driver 3 or something. It'd just be repetitive like some people do. So I had 2 books on the Blackbird, and then I got out of the Air Force. I was a civilian in the early 90s, and I had always wanted to do a book on the Thunderbirds and Blue Angels, about really how they fly and learn to do it. So I spent a winter training season with the Thunderbirds, and then I spent a whole year with the Blue Angels in a real air show season. It took a lot of phone calls, a lot of luck, and a lot of people saying okay. And I did a book on each team, which they're both out of print. They were so popular. They were well done and beautifully photographed. And we're going to reprint those. They're out of print, and they were all film. So we got to make them all digital now. So it's taking us a little while. So I have those 4 books, and those books just continue to sell to this day. It's the single most popular book on the SR-71 worldwide. Sled Driver and The Untouchables, the 2-book set. So we continue to sell them more than ever now. And people, the jet's gone. You're never going to get those photographs again. And I wrote it in a very non-technical way. There's been a number of books, some good books written on the SR-71. And a lot of them are a little technical, a little more of the numbers and everything. And I didn't want to do a book like that. I really wanted to write more of a romantic view of, here's what it was really like in plain language for the airshow fan who always says, what was it like to fly the airplane? So I have those 4 books. I'm working on my bird book now. I like to write. I like photography. I like being out in nature. I'm amazed I got to do all the flying I did. People always say, don't you fly anymore? No, after the Blue Angel year, I hung up my spurs. I said, that's not, my back was hurting. It's really hard on your body. So I didn't want to buy a Cessna and fly around. So I am now a land creature. I don't fly anymore. I had 5,000 hours of the most exciting flying you could ever imagine, between starting in a Cessna 172 in Lubbock, Texas, to the Blue Angels in '94. I did enough flying to scare me for a lifetime, and flew 15 different airplanes, and I just get a kick out of watching the birds today. They outfly us in so many ways. It's incredible. So I'm real proud of my Blackbird books. Like I say, they've been in 48 countries now. We continue to sell them. We're going to have to reprint some more in another year because we're running low. We improve them all the time. I rewrote the book from that very first edition. If you have a first edition from '92, they're worth about $500 on the internet now on Amazon. I still have a box of 10 of them that have been never opened. They're still sealed. That we'll probably do an auction for or something. So like I say, I love writing, and I just didn't want to pump out 5, 10, 8 books, just more of the same. And I could have written another SR book. I know it would sell just because people love to read about the airplane. But I just, if I didn't have something original, and I told all the stories I wanted to tell. And now I make a living as a speaker to fund my photo habit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out there every year, except for the COVID year, we have none, speaking at any number of different events or corporate events, conventions, seminars, mostly non-aviation groups, people that want to hear a speaker outside the box that's not from their group. So
sure.
That's what I do. And I'm starting to get a lot of calls now for next year. I've already done a few this year, but 2019 was pretty tough. 2020, we didn't do too much.
Yeah, I'll agree that it came out of nowhere too. So it's yeah. So and Brian, if people want to order your book, where would they go to?
They just go to www.sleddriver.com. SLEDDRIVER. Sleddriver.com. Click on the picture, it'll take you right to our gift shop, and there's phone number, email, everything. We've got cards, some t-shirts, but mostly the books. I just got 2 more orders today before I came on with you.
Okay, great.
Now they're fun books, and I'm the only guy that could say I flew the jet, I wrote the book, and I took all the pictures. That makes it
Great. Well, Brian, thank you for coming on the show, and appreciate it. And I want to also thank you for your service, for your 20 years in the Air Force, and really appreciate you sharing your life stories and your basically your wisdom that you've gained also through life, and it's really appreciated.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope your audience enjoy. If they got anything out of it, then I feel good. If not, well, I can't help it. So,
yeah,
I'm sure. You having me on.
I'm sure they did. This is Orr's, the official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com. Remember, it's all about creating a kick-ass life for yourself and those that you love. And I want you to do 4 things. I want you to share, subscribe, rate, and review. And if you give me a bad review, that's fine too. I love my trolls. I love you. So if you want to give me a bad review, I don't mind. I've got a pretty good ego and I can handle it. Until next time.
Thank you for joining Dr. Orrist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2, share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3, leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day. Thank you for joining Dr. Orist and his incredible guest. Like what you heard and learned? Then be sure to do 3 things. 1. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2. Share this with someone who may need to hear it. 3. Leave a review and rate this podcast. Opt in at www.thestandard.academy/magazine and get our free digital magazine with savings, articles, and deeper dives into cool controversy. Be the guy who takes action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want. Thank you again, and make it a great day.